What's going on? It is Tuesday, April 4th. Kyle and I are having a good time because we're in Texas, and we have our usual special guest, Steve Greenfield, talking about all the things that he's thinking about. And that's a lot of things. It's actually a lot of things.
It is a lot of things. He hit me with, it was, you know, when the month lands like this, it's like Sunday afternoon, Intel Report. Monday morning, everything I'm reading.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I got him like, I kind of opened my inbox and I saw them all at the same time. I'm like, when does this man sleep?
Never.
He just,
on Delta lay flat to Vegas.
He's
That's
a
exactly
million
what he
miler.
does.
Right. Meanwhile, they have the little port that plugs in, so all of his thoughts and musings can just kind of download into its latest version. Hey, we're so excited to be on the ground in Arlington, Texas. We're going to be in and out of a number of dealerships today. What are we visiting? Classic Chevrolet tomorrow, and today we'll be at Kia of Frisco and Audi of Grapevine. So if you're at either of those stores, look for us because we are going to be running around with cameras and a crew trying to highlight all the stories that are happening in retail automotive, all the good people caring for other people, so that we can have a little bit of a premiere and a little TV show that shows the rest of the world what we already know is going on in retail auto. And then, but obviously we want you all to join us Wednesday night, the big culmination for the ASOTU Live tonight in the Arlington Music Hall. If you're in the area or can get to the area by 6:30 p.m., please do. We would love to have you. You can visit ASOTUX.com and still get tickets. We're also going to have a workshop before the main event taught by Todd Caputo, a Back to Basics, an incredible second-gen dealer, incredibly successful. I've heard Back to Basics quite a few times, Kyle, and I think this is going to be like the sleeper workshop.
He's going to tell us exactly what that means. Everybody at NADA was like, we're going to get back to basics. Everybody was like, what the basics? He's going to go, these are the basics, go.
Yeah, Todd doesn't mince words. But if you can't make it with us in Arlington in person, that's okay. We're live streaming the entire event live. That we got all the audio equipment, all the video equipment, so that the live band from Nashville is going to sound amazing. And we got a game show. We got all kinds of stuff. 6:30 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday night. You can, again, go to ASOTUX, tap into the live stream, put it on your calendar. Make sure you gather your family around and get your popcorn so they can also be a part of the best industry in the entire world, which is
speaking of the best.
What?
Stop. A little segue in the intro. You see what I did there?
It's really good.
Hey, yesterday we dropped the final poll for our Motor Madness bracket. We know that that we've gone through the NCAA tournament, but our tournament's still finishing it up. We got the 2010
the Astro
van naturally, and the 63 Corvette split window coupe. Now look. Come on, people.
We called this one a week or two ago that the Chevy Astro was going to just put on a strong showing. We'll see if it can hold on.
There it is.
But honestly, the Astro is a pretty iconic vehicle. And we'll see what happens. But you get to decide. We don't get to pick. You get to pick. Best modern vehicle of all time. All right, we have actually let's bring Steve on now. We're going to welcome Steve
coming
Greenfield
to you live from a
show.
lay flat. I mean, sorry, his flat in Atlanta.
Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. It's good to be back, as always.
So just tell us, what was the last trip you took?
Oh boy, I can't even remember. This week it's New York tomorrow, and then Halifax. I'm actually going to miss you guys. I can't believe I'm going to miss you guys this week. But I'm flying out to Halifax to speak to some dealers out there. So I hope there's not snow in the ground when I get there.
You have a good chance that there might be. I mean, I'm in Syracuse. There's a little snow on the ground this weekend. Halifax, I think you have a little bit of a better chance.
Oh boy.
Oh man. Yeah.
So you, like Kyle was saying,
I mowed my lawn this weekend, y'all. So
nice.
For the third time.
Gee whiz, I don't have that problem yet. I had a fire going over the weekend, so there you have that.
Wow.
So Steve, you've obviously been very busy, especially with the dealer fund. It's nearing close. Yep. And you released your monthly Intel report, as well as kind of what's been on your mind from the last week. So I think we're just gonna flip to you and let us know, like, what's at the top of the mind. What's the point of the report this month, and why should dealers be paying attention?
Yeah. So I apologize in advance. It's pretty lengthy. As I got into this weekend, I'm like, we've got a month left. We're closing up the dealer fund at the end of April here. And I was like, let me kind of lay out the investment thesis overall, right? So a bunch of stuff that we've talked to our investors about. Our investors are all dealer principals. So we've mapped out sort of like the areas of interest where we think there's the biggest opportunity to help dealers and also make some money over the next 5 years plus. But really, I mean, a lot of exciting content. I hope people can dig in and get some insights. I've already gotten some really good positive feedback from folks that have taken the opportunity to look through this. But we can take the conversation anywhere you want today. But, you know, I think that top of mind for me right now, especially what we're seeing in the news cycle, is in a few areas. You know, one is, you know, software subscriptions and unbundling features and attempting to sell consumers to activate those rear heated seats and the enhanced horsepower on a monthly basis. And then, you know, related to that is over-the-air updates and, you know, the impact that's going to have on the service bays, as a lot of the recall work and the warranty work that used to come into the shop is now going to be able to be remedied via software updates that get pushed to consumers' cars via Wi-Fi while the car is sitting in the garage overnight. So there's a lot of change coming, and you know, very exciting to kind of then think through, okay, so if we were going to start a startup that was going to benefit from some of these trends, what are the problems that we anticipate in the future? And then backing into how are we going to solve some of those problems?
Yeah,
so
well,
go ahead.
Real quick, I think this is important because obviously there are a lot of dealers that have come into the dealer fund, and I don't know how many you're at, but for many dealers who may not be involved in that, I think that it's really a clear line to draw to say, hey, look, these are, if there's a ton of dealers saying, hey, these are the things we're investing in as far as where we want our money to be placed on future bets toward the profitability of dealers and to the success of dealers, then as a dealership network, these are some core areas where we should be paying attention to understand what the moves in the market, who the new tech players are, how that's impacting my profitability, and whether or not people are investing in this fund. It's important for us as an industry to go, hey, these are key topics that at least a large majority of dealers or a large subset of dealers are going, we're actually putting funds toward this because we see it as such an important layer within our profitability ecosystem. So I'd love to start with that. You know, you said software subscriptions and unbundling features, because I see this as a place where dealers are really starting to question whether or not they're going to get their fair share of the revenue, whether it come from the OEMs or it come from other technology providers that allow that are allowed to get into the tech ecosystem of these OEMs, and where the dealers have a foothold there, or whether or not they do.
Yeah. So let me paint a picture, and the mental juices will start flowing, because you'll be like, oh, there are businesses to be built. So I was in LA last week, and I was at 2 different dealer groups talking to the owners, and this conversation came up. So you're a used car manager, and in 3 years from now, a car comes in and you're appraising an off-brand vehicle. Say we're at a BMW store and a Mercedes comes in, and you're appraising that car, not knowing which of those features are going to be active tomorrow when the consumer goes back and cancels them all on their credit card.
Right.
So now you're trying to appraise a car either at an auction or in a trade-in process, and you're like, man, I mean, if all those features persist, the car is worth $35,000. If they all get turned off, it's worth $25,000.
Wow.
So think about sort of like, how are they going to know? Well, they're not going to know unless there's a centralized clearinghouse for all of this data. How is a consumer who, you know, subscribed to these features like 3 years ago and has been paying for them monthly on their credit card, how are they going to get confidence that when they do leave that dealer and hand the car in, that they're actually going to, oh, I got a cat, there you go. Rather than cat sighting, they're going to get confidence that all of their subscription products have been canceled, that they're no longer be charged. And then on the flip side, that same used car manager a week later is trying to demo that car. Someone comes in for a test drive, and do you think that the manufacturer is going to want to give them an incentive to upsell all of those features, even if it's an off-brand vehicle? Well, of course they are, but are they going to give an incentive to a used car manager from a different brand to demo the car, upsell them at the point of purchase? I mean, the complexity within the F&I office could be pretty intense when you've got, you know, 30 different used car brands, you know, all different from my brand, that I'm trying to figure out, like, what is this car? What can be upsold? You know, and when I do sell, is there any revenue share back to me? And does that revenue share go back to the salesperson, or the dealer principal.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and layer on top of that. But,
I was gonna say
go another thing, and then I'll go another thing too, because I'm excited.
Okay, I'll give you one more. So think of a window sticker in the future. A window sticker on a car is going to have this grayed out area that, you know what, there are hard options and there are soft options, and the soft options may or may not be active.
It's grayed out. Oh my goodness.
So there you go. Sorry, Kyle.
The other potential here is these are operating systems now. These are not just, you know, infotainment systems that have a closed door to upgrades. These are operating systems. So you think about the Apple ecosystem is an operating system with an app store, with opportunity for other developers to layer in their apps within the app store. So what apps could be layered into these operating systems, and are we going to allow third party? That's where you said this clearinghouse or this data warehouse of everything that could be or is available on this car. And then how do third party developers have relationships with dealers, manufacturers, and technology platforms to make sure that there's an understanding of what or what not is available, or what's been turned on or not, or what's the free app, or the you know, where does all of that start and stop? So I think, and you know, you said something there is like, well, who gets paid for all this?
Right.
You know, which is always the question.
Oh my goodness.
Right. What portion of revenue, what portion of who's going to be the seller and who's going to be the reseller? You know, it's interesting because this is when you look at other places, like where software as a service is normal, or where app store purchasing is normal, you start to see these like penny shares, right? Like you think about all of the scandals with iTunes and musicians, and well, my music is on that store and I get 0.0001 of a penny for every download of it, right? And so how far do we have to go with the revenue model to figure out whether or not these things are part of the revenue of a dealership or a salesperson or anything like that? Wild questions.
So obviously this is looking over the horizon and, like you said, trying to predict what is going to be the important challenge of the next 3 to 5 to 7 years, and starting to back into solutions through the fund. You also spend so much time on the ground with dealers, and obviously the fund is full of dealer principals. How does somebody on the front line of the store, whether it be a used car manager or a general sales manager, what should they even do about this conversation that is over the horizon? Because you're hearing and you're seeing a lot. What would your advice be to the front lines today?
Yeah, so I think the main thing is to like separate the signal from the noise, and there's a lot of noise. So there's a lot of things that you don't need to be paying attention to. Mm-hmm. I think if I'm on the front line, there's a few things that I should be paying attention to in the news cycle. One is how quickly for my brand are subscriptions coming. We know for some brands, like if you go to BMW right now and you configure a car on the OEM site, there are subscription products that you can elect into as a consumer. So you're going to start feeling those immediately if you're selling new cars, and you're going to start feeling those fairly immediately as those new cars come back as used vehicles. Wow. I'm more concerned around, you know, if you're a used car manager, the complexities that I sort of spoke to earlier. What are you doing when you're starting to look at vehicles in the auction lanes? Because this uncertainty is going to hit you, maybe not for 6 months, but surely 12 months from now, as some of these rental cars start coming back into the auction lanes, it's going to hit you. So I think that's another thing. And then, you know, we wouldn't really get to like the connectivity and over-the-air updates. But, you know, if I'm a fixed operations director or a service writer, surely some of that I'm going to start to feel as, you know, recalls come out, but then the OEM say, hey, we don't need to actually have that car go back into a franchise dealer for the work. We can push a software update. And, you know, the service writers and the fixed operations directors are going to have to be attuned to what software updates have been pushed to vehicles. And, you know, it's going to be a new service that when you come in, you're going to have to check a vehicle to make sure this car has had all of its software updates, because if they haven't, something could be malfunctioning. Think about your phone. Like my phone doesn't operate quite well when I don't have the latest operating system. And, you know, there's an incentive for me to always have the latest operating system, battery life, et cetera. It's going to be the same thing with vehicles.
Wow. Yeah. Man, people have hard enough time with their phone for their vehicles to do that. All right. There's obviously so much to dig into there. If you are interested in getting this report or Steve's thoughts on a weekly basis, you go to automotiveventures.com. right? So .com, automotiveventures.com, and you can sign up for free. And we highly recommend you do it because it always is kind of like an engaging, like little stimulus that gets you thinking over the horizon and how that affects what you're doing today. Speaking of things that are getting our minds thinking these days.
Segue.
All right, so we love.
We're thinking about our minds.
We're thinking about our minds, getting our minds thinking. Well, our AI is kind of like your mind thinking on it. It's complicated, but we like to bring Steve into these conversations. So artificial intelligence, we know all the talk about GPT, but just the broader AI community could help individuals become more self-aware by offering more granularized, personalized insights, according to a column by Thomas. I'm not going to pronounce his last name. You can see it in the show notes. Who's a psychology professor at University College London. And he argues that this technology could use shopping behavior and shopping patterns and subscription patterns to help interpret the data and give customers and consumers insights back into their own personalities to help raise their ethical reputation. So basically they're saying you buy things, you watch things, you search for things, and we can take all those things. And now AI can tell us what your psychological tendencies would be based on this data. And he's saying that marketers and companies are going to deploy this even more. And it's a good idea to actually share this data back with consumers to just keep everything ethical and transparent. And he thinks consumers will be excited about the insights. Just like, you know, your watch gives you insights like, hey, you might be tired because your blood oxygen level or whatever. I'm going to kick off. I think this is a disaster waiting to happen because, you know, congratulations, you're expecting, you know, postcards coming from Target back in the day, creeped people out quite a bit. But I think this is just going to be a whole new layer. My wife already still can't figure out how she gets ads on her phones from things that she searched in the past. Steve, Kyle, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I'll kick the second one. So the interesting thing to me here is actually, and I can't remember if I shared this with you last week, but basically in art, there's already a homogenization of a lot of like art and the way that we perceive the world and the way that we do things. And my fear is that there would be these kind of like buckets of personality traits that would be so clearly defined that the AI would further homogenize purchasing behavior or activity behavior or personality behavior because of these trends in shopping. You think about the way that marketing happens right now. We put large swaths of people in big buckets and say, hey, it's a good chance that these people are going to move toward this behavior, and we act on that from a marketing perspective, and so we entice people into that. But if they're told that they're in that ecosystem, that seems like a little bit of a dicey situation. And instead of hey, you might want this, it's you are this. That's a wild proposition.
Steve, what do you think?
Well, I think it's the natural extension. You remember back in the early days of the internet, it was like you get lookalike audiences, right? People who like this also tend to like this. But now they can say, hey, we know which zip code you live in, and we know which car you drive, and we know which Starbucks you go to, we know which gym you go to, and we know that you know on Tuesday nights you tend to order pizza and you tend to wear this outfit. And now I think it's just, you know, hyper segmentation. I think, you know, in the hands of somebody who wants to do well by the world, I think it could be great. You know, you could actually have very, very relevant advertising targeted to me, making recommendations that resonate every single time. But we know, you know, the world isn't full of good actors out there. So I think it can be misused. And like, I don't know, the downside could be, you know, you are trying to recommend pharmaceuticals to consumers or find their weaknesses, et cetera. So I'm not super optimistic that this will only be used for good intents.
I feel like they've made movies about this, Paul. They may have made movies about this.
One or two. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us to get things going in the morning. Steve, thanks for joining us as usual. And look, we all have a lot of work to do, but in the bottom line, if we can serve somebody else with what we do, it's the way to go.